We have some more breaking news from the NHL. Marc Bergevin, former GM in Montreal, has got himself a new job. Plus, the other big news today is Evander Kane has cleared unconditional waivers. His contract could be terminated, but a grievance is being filed. Things could get messy. We'll discuss that situation. Plus, we also have some additional updates on some of the top defensemen involved in trade rumors involved, like Chychrun and John Klingberg. We'll discuss all that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and rumors to talk about here today. Let's get started first up with the big news on Evander Kane today. Of course, yesterday we get the bombshell news that we were not expecting, with the news that Kane was placed on unconditional waivers for the purpose of contract termination. Of course, no big surprise. He cleared waivers. No NHL team was going to put in a claim and take on that contract to save him from that, when they'd have the option to sign him as an unrestricted free agent for a far less amount once that is all sorted out and he officially becomes an unrestricted free agent. So technically today, they can put forth the paperwork to avoid the contract, and he becomes an unrestricted free agent. However, it's already been made known shortly after the waivers announcement was made this afternoon that the NHLPA, with the support of his agent, Dan Milstein, will indeed be filing a grievance on behalf of Kane. Now, of course, this is not your typical situation where somebody is, kind of gets fired from their job and kind of goes after a wrongful dismissal suit. It's sort of the same idea in a sense, but it's not like Kane's going to stand a chance to get his job back. I think at this point, he doesn't even want the job back. He'd probably rather move on as well. But essentially, this is all boils down to money. Kane was owed just shy of $23 million remaining on that contract over the remaining term. And now he's going to lose out on all that cash. He won't get any more paychecks from the San Jose Sharks unless he wins a grievance. Now, we've already seen quotes from NHL Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly saying that he feels, and the NHL feels, that they had enough of a case to terminate the contract. So certainly we've seen issues with Kane earlier in the season where he was under investigation for multiple issues, some of which were proven. He was suspended. Obviously, part of that was COVID violation under the protocols that were in place, and that's happened again. So according to what we had learned is that he was being accused essentially of testing positive for COVID, leaving isolation, traveling from San Jose to Vancouver, and then not only did he travel when he shouldn't have, but when he was supposed to report back to, I guess not really camp, but report back to the team after the holiday break, he was significantly late. Like, he was supposed to report back, I believe it was on January 1st or 2nd, and he didn't show up until January the 6th. At least that's what San Jose's side of things are alleging right now, and if that's proven true, I would think that they probably do stand a case, given the fact, like I said, that's a couple of major violations just in the last little while here. So given that, I wonder what the odds are of a grievance actually, getting, going through and him winning any of this. But essentially, that's what it's about. Now, I know on the 32 Thoughts segment last night on Hockey Night in Canada, Elliotte Friedman made mention of the fact that, until the grievance is dealt with, he may not sign anywhere else, and it's hard to say, but he says that there are teams out there that will definitely want to sign him, especially considering that they could probably sign him short-term and cheap, considering what he's going through here. But, you have to wonder that, he said one issue that he wondered that they'd have to figure out would be if he wins the grievance, and technically the contract is still good to be paid a portion of the money and for him to sign elsewhere. Is there any issues with that and having two contracts? Because it's not a common scenario that we've actually seen where a player won a grievance like that and actually remained in the NHL. So we'll have to see where that goes. I can't imagine there'll be any issues with it, but still, I think they could probably treat it the same as a buyout, really. Like, he could be bought out of one deal and then, go sign elsewhere. So we'll have to see about that. But Friedman's convinced there are teams that will definitely want to sign him. We also learned that part of the contract that he had with San Jose involved a no trade clause, and he had a 3-team list he could submit, which to me, for a player of his caliber, is extremely silly on San Jose's part to give him that much control over potential trades during the length of that contract. But it's believed that the teams that he had on his list that he would accept a trade to were the 2 teams in Florida, so the Lightning and the Panthers, as well as his hometown Vancouver Canucks. So you have to think if that's where he was willing to accept a trade to, that might be some of his personal choices to sign with once he's a free agent here, which is technically would be now. By all intents and purposes, his contract is voided. It's just a matter of fighting to get some of the money at this point. But like I said, I don't know that those teams would have interest. We have no way to know that. Hard to imagine who's going to take a chance on him. But like I said, Friedman's convinced that somebody will. And it wouldn't completely be shocking if they did at this point. But those were the teams that were, reportedly on his list. So this is still the beginning of a new saga here with Evander Kane. It's not over. We'll have to monitor this situation and see where things go from here. Now, as I mentioned, the other significant news that came out a short time ago is the LA Kings have hired Marc Bergevin, former general manager for about a decade or just shy of, with the Montreal Canadiens. Of course, the Habs now have Jeff Gorton running the show in Montreal, but of course he's not have the title of general manager. He has the title of executive vice president, where he will basically be hiring the general manager and kind of run the show and have somebody who can speak French and deal with the media and all that in a general manager type of setting here. So it's going to be like a two-headed monster, and interviews are certainly ongoing for that right now. But for Marc Bergevin to get a job as a senior advisor in LA to general manager Rob Blake's a little bit surprising, considering we all kind of agreed, most of us thought that Bergevin looked really tired and worn out after a long decade in Montreal, looked very stressed at times. So for him to get back to work so quickly, in my opinion at least, is a bit of a surprise, but certainly not a huge shock that somebody will give him a job, especially in that type of role. We saw the Kings do the same thing with Ron Hextall when he was in between jobs. I believe it was between the Flyers and the Penguins. After he was relieved of his duties as GM in Philly, he did go back to LA where he had previously worked. Similar type of thing. You see a lot of ex-GMs kind of work as advisors like that in between jobs. That's not an uncommon thing. We also know that general manager Rob Blake's also in the final year of his contract. There's been some discussions on what that means for him. What does it mean for the team? Is it possible the team could go in a different direction? You wouldn't think. I mean, it looks as though he has a great long-time relationship with Luc Robitaille, who would be his boss. He and Robitaille, of course, were teammates, great friends, and now work together in this role for some time as well. And he says that they had agreed to kind of just wait and deal with it in the offseason, which does seem a little bit odd, though. Normally, you want the contract looked after. You don't like having those kind of situations play out in kind of a lame duck type of role. But the Kings have made decent progress. They're not looking like they're heading for the playoffs. At least right now, that's my opinion, they're not. So you have to wonder, though, is there any chance Bergevin was brought in just in case things don't work out? It's hard to say, but it's certainly very interesting. Of course, Phillip Danault, who left Montreal on not great terms. That was a really odd scenario, in my opinion, how Danault left Montreal. I was rumored early in the season that an extension was on the table. Danault felt it was greatly undervalued, didn't accept it. And he, according to what we had heard from his camp, that Bergevin and the Montreal Canadiens just never made another offer. So I wonder how things are between them. And of course, now they're both in LA. Hard to say, but certainly interesting times there. Bergevin, will he be possibly looking for a bigger role in LA? Is Rob Blake going to remain general manager? Some questions that we'll have to look at. And until Blake is signed, I'm sure there's probably bound to be some speculation in that regard. A few other quick updates on some trade talk that we talked about yesterday. There was additional talk about this on the 32 Thoughts segment on Hockey Night in Canada last night. When it comes to Jacob Chychrun in Arizona, it's believed that talks are really heating up. There's lots of interest. The Coyotes are getting a lot of calls. Jeff Marek made mention of as many as 10 teams being in the mix right now. We talked previously, yesterday, about the Islanders being a heavy favorite with a potential package. They might be looking to maybe make a trade. I know Arthur Staple of The Athletic had reports on what he felt they were going to have to offer to get a chance to get the deal done. Jeff Marek made mention of a few other teams, as well as Friedman in the latest podcast, talking about the Anaheim Ducks, LA Kings, and possibly St. Louis Blues as teams to keep your eye on. The Blues especially being one of the teams that are definitely headed for the playoffs that are expected to add on defense. That would be a big upgrade, but a costly one for them as well. The Ducks and the Kings certainly have a deep prospect pool that they could certainly make some interesting offers to Arizona if they want to go down that road. But the Kings have seemed reluctant so far to move any super high-end talent, as were the Ducks when they were heavily involved with the Jack Eichel trade talk, so it'll be difficult to see where things go. But those are reportedly the teams in the mix on Chychrun right now. When it comes to Klingberg, just to clarify as well, it was being reported by Dave Pagnotta yesterday that he had requested a trade out of Dallas, and that's not entirely incorrect, but just to kind of clarify things, but Jeff Merrick talked about this as well on 32 Thoughts, saying that essentially what it was is that after contract talks hit a kind of a wall and we're not going anywheres, Klingberg and his agent essentially asked the Dallas Stars if they were able to go search for a trade themselves and be able to present it. So they wanted permission from the team to kind of look for a trade. So it doesn't necessarily, not the exact same thing that he says he wanted to be traded, but it kind of is, but it isn't. So it's just a change of wording, but kind of means exact same thing here in my opinion. We had a quote from Klingberg yesterday as well, reported by, I believe it was Matthew DeFrank, saying that Klingberg just felt like he wasn't valued or appreciated based on what he was being offered in those contract negotiations after what he's put through and put up for numbers and played for this team over the last number of years. So certainly doesn't sound like a relationship that's mendable right now. Obviously he's still there playing for them, and we'll see where this goes. They may choose to use him as their own rental, but to me, for a team that's been inconsistent, is not guaranteed a playoff spot, I would look to move him so you get something in return, because you know at this point he's not coming back. So you might as well get something in return, because I think based on being a 29-year-old right shot defenseman making $4 million, there's going to be a lot of good options and offers out there, especially with somebody who's put up 40, 50 points before. Teams will be calling for Klingberg services ahead of the playoffs. It makes sense to get a decent return while you can, rather than lose them for nothing. Let me know your thoughts on everything discussed here today down below in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.